I'm trying something new. I'm recording locally to my drive. What I realized is that if I record locally, it's harder to share. So I have to set up some kind of video sharing channel for it. So I'll probably set up a YouTube channel or something for our recordings. But I'll let you know and I'll share the links when it's set up. Anyway, right. Welcome to the class. This is actually it's only our second synchronous class, right? And it's the class where we begin to talk about module 1. And just to give you the amount of time we have, I'm not releasing module 2 until the middle of September, third week of September actually. So we have time to talk, right? We have time to talk, we have time to share, we have time to ask questions and all of these things. And no pala, this is IEE. September 30 pa, yung module 2 nyo. So matagal pa. So we have time to talk about stuff and to talk about experiences and stuff. And I'm actually want to ask you guys some stuff from module 1. But for now, let me just get the ball rolling by talking about some things that module 1 wanted to present. I think the first thing is that module 1 wanted to show that there is a difference between a study of narrative and a study of literature, right? We're not studying the meaning, quote unquote, of works anymore. What we're studying is how, let's say, the various parts of a story work together to develop the meaning that the reader experiences. So it's a kind of behind the scenes look at how stories operate. And that's kind of what we're doing with the idea of eventually realizing that we can use that understanding to understand stories that we encounter and maybe craft our own, because you never know that maybe in your work later on, you'll be asked to develop those things as well, right? So we did a perusal thing, and I was reading through your perusal stuff, and I gotta be honest. Excuse me. I gotta be honest. Perusal is new to me too, right? It's new to me, but I found it interesting. I hope you found the experience okay. I mean, I guess it's supposed to mimic the experience of reading something together and being able to talk about that something that you read together, right? And I like what you guys were talking about with Bart's, for example, at the start. Um, and well, I did put comments there. I'm not gonna say my comments. I put some comments. I'm not yet done. I'm gonna go back and comment some more actually. But I love the fact that you guys are participating. And what the point here is that I think what Thomas was trying to say is exactly what I was trying to show you, that narrative, that the way we're looking at it, narrative is not just stories in the sense of, you know, fiction, short stories, and that stuff. Narrative is storytelling, and storytelling comes in many different forms. And that, I think that's something that we have to realize and recognize, especially since this is a management class. You don't really read lit stuff, right? In management or in a management setting, you usually read what? Diba? If you go to the management section of the bookstore, for example, you're not going to see a lot of fiction. You're going to see a lot of stories on how to succeed and leadership traits and management tips and things like that, self-help stuff, right? Not a lot of narrative, not a lot of literature in terms of, you know, fiction and stuff like that. So I like that you guys liked the video, Words Hurt, right? What did you think? I saw people kind of react well to it. It was a fun video, wasn't it? It was quite a fun video. Um, I actually credit my colleague for sharing that. She was the one who found it, and it is a good way of showing you plot, right? And in the how we know plot to work. That one, diba, as some of you said in the comments, one plot influences the next. And I think that the difference is when you're looking at plot, the what do you call this? The the orderliness of it, the structuredness of stories has to do with the plot. We don't really experience real life that way, right? Real life is very random. Real life is quite messy. The events happen to you and you don't really know the cause. You don't know what happened. But the tendency for a human being is to find the cause, right? I had a really bad day. It was because I wore these socks, right? That's very typical uh, way a human being could rationalize things that happen. Or a basketball game, for example. Michael Jordan, who's I guess you know in basketball. Michael Jordan, um, if he was going to play a basketball game, would only wear boxer shorts from the University of North Carolina. Why? Because he thought that if he wore the boxer shorts from his university, he'd win, right? And that's true. So he actually orders it custom for him. So the university makes these shorts for him, and they send it to him, and he has a new pair every time he plays, right? Why? Because nga, to him it's how he wins, right? He'll win if he's wearing those shorts. Another example is I think Manny Pacquiao was saying he has a pair of socks, right? That does the same thing. That when he's going to go box, he has to wear those socks because they're lucky socks. In truth, there's probably no real causal action the socks do, right? But the human mind needs it, right? We need to kind of make some sort of causal relationship with something so that we understand it better. And that's why stories work that way. If we wrote a story the way life works, it's going to be very random and we're not going to understand it, right? We're going to be angry a lot of the time. So, ba't ito yung nangyari? Ano yung nangyari? But ganun, it doesn't make sense. But you realize life is like that. And it's us that kind of structures it so that we understand it better. Um, so there. And then, well, talked about character. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because we kind of went through it. I chose uh, Captain America because he's an easy character to discuss, right? The guy is a flag, right? Um, quite literally, he is a flag. The interesting thing about it is if you guys watched um the Marvel show, TV show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which came out this year, no? Right? There was an interrogation of Captain America because yes, he's Captain America, but it's not Steve Rogers, right? And for a while, Captain America was what's his name? The other guy, right? They named someone else Captain America. But by the end of it, Captain America was Sam, right? And if you talk about Captain America representing America, that's a very different character from Steve Rogers, right? Una-una, minority. And he kind of says this in his final monologue, right? He's a minority, he's a black man, right? So Captain America, America is now minority. America is not white. Is one. Number two, America is not rich, right? Sam, throughout the series, and his family struggled through financial issues, right? Trying to save the family boat and all that stuff. So you have a very different representation of America in is his last name Wilson? Sam Wilson ba? I can't remember. Yeah, in
Sam
Sam
Wilson.
Wilson, diba? So it's a very different America. And even in the comic kasi when he became Captain America, there was an interrogation of it and there was an idea of what is America now about, right? And that's kind of I think where they're trying to go also with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There is that question of what is America, and I'm glad that they decided to reflect a non-white America. There is criticisms about it, yes, I know, but I think it's a step, and it's a fair step, not a great step. It's a fair step. Uh, towards a recognition that maybe America is no longer the America of Steve Rogers. Diba? And that's the thing. Actually, it'd be better if Captain, if like Sam turned out to be gay, right? Then you have an even wider representation, right? If you ever turn, like maybe him and Bucky actually have a thing going on, but that's a different story altogether. And I don't know if fans are ready for that. I have a feeling that fans would freak out and pick it outside Disney's door. Now, what the hell are you doing to our characters? There aren't a lot of homosexual characters yet in comics, right? At least openly homosexual. Now there are more now, right? Quite in fairness, there are more now, but before wala. And I think like if you have like Captain America or Superman or Batman, God forbid, right? Batman pala was gay. All those jokes about Batman and Robin are true. Hala. Imagine how freaked out people would get. I think, oh my God, he was a pedophile. Hala. Hala ko. Right? But yeah, so anyway, right, moving on. We'll talk about more of these. I'll leave you guys to talk about any topic you like. We talked about story world, and I'm glad you guys got the point. Story world is more than setting, right? Story world exists beyond setting, and I think that's the reason why I chose Star Wars for this is because I think of the um, movie franchises and show franchises that we have, Star Wars is actually one of those places where the story world has actually moved so far beyond the original story. And that's thanks to things like the Clone Wars, Rebels, the animated series, the TV series, The Mandalorian, for example, the upcoming book of Boba Fett. All of these, uh, you can call them like outlier stories, right? They're not really part of the main big story of the Skywalker Darth Vader thing. Um, all of these kind of fleshed out the world around that story so that it's now a very interesting and very diverse place. I mean, The Mandalorian is an offshoot of the Clone Wars, right? All of the world building that was done during the Clone Wars resulted in The Mandalorian. And um, it's my favorite Star Wars show, right? Because it's fun. I think what I like about The Mandalorian is it goes back to the spirit of the original Star Wars movie. It's fun. Not a lot of, baggage going on. Yes, there's a one coming up that adapts Japanese anime style. I think Disney is going to town with their own acquisition of the Star Wars franchise, knowing that they can make a lot of money out of it. There's even I saw an article about the Galactic Cruise, and apparently Disney has set up an attraction in their park where you pretend to go on a galactic cruise. Actually, you kind of go into a building and you stay inside the building for several days. Is what it is, right? Because you're technically traveling through space in a spaceship, so you're like stuck in the hotel for several days, but for some reason it's fun. And I guess what I saw is it's expensive. It's like several hundred thousand pesos, I think, for 3 nights. And okay, I'm not gonna afford it. Tell me about it na lang if you ever go. So there. But yeah, I think Star Wars is that. No, Star Wars has developed their world far beyond the original story, and that's why you have story worlds. Another franchise that's doing that is of course Marvel, right? Marvel has an enormous story world, right? And they built that over what decades of writing comics. So and DC is the same thing, right? The comic book universes are very big, and that's why you can accommodate all these different stories. And for Marvel, they actually go one step further and even include things that aren't even in their universe, right? With that, I don't know if you know What If, the current show. What If is it's actually an old concept. What If has been happening in comics for a while now, and it's really just Marvel playing around with the idea of what if it's like this and what if it's like that. And I think they've chosen some very interesting uh, Yeah, the Spider-Man. Rafa saying, yeah, looking forward to the upcoming Spider-Man movie. Will Andrew Garfield and what's his name? The first Spider-Man. Be actually
Tobey
there.
Tobey
Maguire.
Maguire.
Tobey Maguire. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Old person. Will they be there? Will they be in the movie?
Wala pa.
Yes, sir, they will be.
Sure na yun. Kasi I know it's speculation.
It's more
I
of
think
an
trailer.
informed speculation, sir.
I think people are hoping. That's what it is. People are hoping, hoping, hoping. You realize though that if Tobey Maguire is there, he has to play old Spider-Man because he's old, and he's probably going to have to work out again to get any. I don't know what shape Tobey Maguire is in. Actually, he hasn't. I haven't seen him in public in a while, so we don't know. But yeah, it is an interesting idea, right? I think the Spider Verse, the Into the Spider Verse movie, the first one, the animated one,
Yes, sir.
was a
Super
brilliant.
nice.
I know it was a brilliant uh, way of introducing the idea of multiple Spider-Man and all these things. Is it raining? I think it's raining. Okay, so just to wrap it up now, I don't know if you guys watched. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie called The Matrix.
Familiar.
Yeah,
Yes, sir, they released the new trailer.
yeah, you did. So, what do you think of the new trailer?
It's interesting.
Yeah, because the premise of The Matrix is that they set up a fake universe, right, where everybody lives, but it's set in 1999, right? So does that mean that this new Matrix is not 1999 anymore? Doesn't look like it. It looks contemporary, right? It looks like it's set now. So in which case, right? And you can't do a young Keanu. Obviously, Keanu has gotten over. So what are they doing? And Keanu was dead in the Matrix trilogy. He died. Kaya resurrection, eh, diba? But um, it's weird kasi nga I remember I hated the last movie. But yes, the experience machine thought experiment. That's very iconic in philosophy. The interesting thing about it is that Keanu was very much a Christ figure by the third movie. He goes through a passion and death, right? At the end, pa he's literally is in the position of a crucified Christ when he dies, right? So alam mong they were hyping up the Christ thing, and so Christ is resurrected. What does that mean? And Keanu looked like Jesus Christ pa now. So I don't know what it means anymore, right? So, uh, but what I am hopeful for is number one, it's not written by the Wachowskis, which is why the first set of movies got in trouble. The Wachowskis wrote it and they kind of got carried away, right? Because they're nerds, eh. The Wachowskis are nerds at heart, and so they kind of get carried away with their story, and that's why it got all confusing. That's one. It's not written by them. Apparently, it's written by a guy named David Mitchell, who, if you don't know, wrote a book called Cloud Atlas, right? And if you haven't read Cloud Atlas, it's one of the most interesting, difficult, but brilliantly written books out there. The movie is also good. The movie is also good, but it's very different, a very different experience from the book. Um, that's one. The other one is not. It's only one Wachowski directing, right? Not both. So my hope is that it gets less confusing because it's only one vision and one, alam mo yun, instead of two, there's just one vision running it. So we hope they're saying that there are references to the Matrix video game in it, the old MMORPG that never worked. So we'll see. I don't know what they're doing with it, right? But there. They're trying to do what they're trying to do with the Matrix is build a story world like Marvel and Star Wars, where they can then expand outwards. I suspect, right? That's what they're planning to do with it. And who knows? It works. Who knows? It might work. But they don't get as confused as the last movie. I hated that last movie. But anyway, right. So I've taken up half the period already talking. So can I please hear from you guys before I just talk the whole hour. So I'm gonna shut up now and just tell me whatever you think. If you have any questions, if you have any things you want to clarify.
So I got a question.
Go, go.
Sir, I wanna ask, sir. Since we're studying narratology, I don't know if that's the right
Right.
term, but because like I read see Barthes before the death of the author, and then he was saying that well the narrative doesn't really come from the author; it comes from the reader, because every reader has their own separate lexicons.
Yep.
So it's kind of like paano po ba yung, what do we have to say about it? Na parang if it's just kind of subjective, why do you even study about it?
Well, what Bart was saying kasi, and Bart isn't wrong, right? There's a reason why he said that. Because two people can watch the same thing or read the same thing and come up with very different understandings of it, right? And if we're assuming that the text carries the meaning, then you should be getting the same meaning, right? Because it's the same meaning in the text. What Bart's kind of highlighted with that, and it's not just him, there was also a guy named Roman Jakobson and also Michel Foucault who talked about the author, the death of the author being dead, the author function, whatever you call it, talked about the fact that uh, when a work is written, right, when the work leaves the mind of the writer and ends up on a page or on a file or on a screen, then it becomes fixed, right? At least in terms of what the writer wanted to do, right? The writer, let's say it's published now, no? Unless the writer publishes a revised edition, the text is fixed. Whatever was written is there. Now, that doesn't mean that the meaning is fixed. Why? Because the other part of the experience of creating meaning in encountering fiction or encountering a text comes from the reader, right? And that's where Barthes comes in. His idea of lexicons, right? I would have used the word context. We come from different contexts. We come from different histories. We grew up differently. We grew up uniquely. We encountered. We all went to school, but the schools are different. The teachers are different. What we pick up from those schools are different. The media we consume is different. Some of you guys like anime. Some of you guys don't. Some of you guys play video games. Some of you guys don't. Some of you guys watch sports. Some of you guys don't. And that all works together um, to form a kind of filter when you read. So you guys can see the same thing, but based on the filters you have, you pick up different things, right? Which means that even if the author meant this, let's say meant meaning A, you could be picking up something else. And that happens a lot. I mean, a good example would be there was this movie, I don't know if you've heard of it, called Black Hawk Down. It was by
Sir, I've watched
Ridley.
it.
You watch, right? Ridley Scott, exciting movie, right? Black Hawk crashes in Somalia. These guys have to fight through an overnight in a city which is hostile to them, and they have to survive until they get picked up. And then they have that epic scene where they even don't have space inside the truck and they have to run, right, to the base. That's a true story, right? Now, interestingly enough, you watch it, and who do you root for?
The soldiers.
Of course, right? The soldiers, the Americans, right? The special forces people. The movie takes pains to make them sympathetic, like the character of Ewan McGregor who makes coffee in the middle of the battlefield. And apparently he's really good at coffee, right? Yung ganun. So they make these characters sympathetic. Funnily enough, when that movie was aired in Somalia, guess who the Somalians were cheering for? Right?
Themselves.
Yeah. So when when the helicopter crashed and they were taking the body out of the helicopter, which was a real thing, it was actually showed on the news at the time that the Somalians took the body out of the helicopter and were dragging it through the streets. That was what they were cheering. Same story, different meaning, right? So that's what I think Barth was saying when he was talking about the idea of different lexicons and that the author is dead. right? Because to a degree, once the work is published, the author cannot influence you anymore, right? Unlike, let's say, if the story was being told to you directly, the author can, because the author can change things as he sees you listen and he'll see you react, right? Then the author can actually change the story as you are listening to it to make it more acceptable, get more profound, whatever to you. So that's I think what Barthes was trying to say, and it's a whole set of literary theory called reader response theory, right? Which posits nga that meaning is cannot be generated by the text alone by itself. The text is fixed and static. Meaning is generated by the reader, right? So there, I hope that answers the question. Anything else?
Sir, I got a question then.
Okay.
So this more of like a normative thing, like a
Mhm.
normative question. I'm just gonna ask na. So if we create our own meaning from the phenomenon that we experience on our side, basically we create our own narrative. So is there a way that we can know which narrative ought to be heard and to be not heard, or to be allowed or what?
Ought to be heard by who?
Like what kind of no, what kind of narratives should be permissible, and which one should not be permissible? Because if
That,
it's kind of subjective anyway, so
I think that's your
it's kind of a normative question.
okay. So you mean that's society's norms now, right? So then you're talking about what is acceptable to society or not. Now, who determines that? That's still you. But remember that you were raised in a society. You already have a sense of what's appropriate or not, right? So you can go against it if you like, but chances are you will follow a certain set of beliefs that you will see as your own principles, and that's what you will use to kind of guide you. Right now, you guys are, I would argue, still forming your belief system, right? You're still making decisions on what you will believe, what you will finally ascribe to, and all of that. But you're also close to the end of forming those things. By the time you guys graduate, or maybe a few years after that, I suspect you'd have a very clear sense of what is right and wrong, what you should and shouldn't do, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, and all of that. And that usually determines what narratives you follow. Does that mean that there's one? No, right? I mean, look at our social media, right? There's a explosion of beliefs. Look at this. There's an explosion of narratives. So, uh, is there one? I'd argue no. Are there recommended ones? Yes. Do we follow? Not necessarily. So in the end, it's really up to you. Is it worth studying? Yes. So at least you understand how it works, right? If you in the process of you forming your own beliefs and stuff like that, an understanding of the processes behind it should help you uh, formulate things better, hopefully. But again, that's hopefully. I'm not the one who's going to tell you how to think, right? And I don't think anybody should. So that.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Sir, I have a clarification lang.
Go ahead.
So, you mentioned in the module that it's important to look at the chronological order as well, because not all stories are told in a linear manner. So, let's say, for example, movies like Back to the Future, where there's complicated timelines. How do we break that down or look at its narrativity in the sense that should we also piece the timeline together, or do we look at it as is?
Well, both. The answer is both. Kasi that's actually I think in the next module. If I remember right. But we're talking about that's the it's the variance of time, right? And that's an effect that is actually used by writers uh, to create different effects in the reader. Things like that, nonlinear time, the extension of time, slow mo, for example, right? An incident that takes maybe a second gets extended. Why? Or the reverse. An incident that should take longer gets compressed. So let's say SpongeBob, right? 1 week later, and things like that. Why does it do that? Right? It's because there are certain effects that the author, the producers want to create with narrative and manipulation of time, temporal manipulation. Sounds like it's a superpower, but actually it's just how you order events. But temporal manipulation is one of those things, right? That is done. So um, you do both, especially if it's a complicated story like Back to the Future. I don't know if you guys watched a movie called Pulp Fiction, right? The movie called Pulp Fiction was hailed as it won the Cannes Palme d'Or, the Golden Palm of Cannes of the Cannes Film Festival, and it was praised for its non-linear storytelling. It was very non-linear, and it gave you no warning to the lack of linearity of it. So I think one of the most jarring moments there was, I hope I'm not spoiling it for anyone, but there's a scene there where John Travolta gets killed, and then later on in the movie he comes out of the bathroom. I was like, huh? Wait, aren't you dead? Or no, sorry, he comes out of the bathroom, is killed, and then later on in the movie he's there again, and so you're like, wait, I thought he was dead, and you kind of go through this moment where you're disoriented, and you kind of have to start piecing together. Wait. I not paying enough attention? Did I miss something? And at least with me, I had to kind of go through a chronological piecing together after I watched the movie, right? To see, oh wait, oh, so that's when it happened. That's where that happened. And so it does help, right? Especially if you're trying to do an analysis of something. So and you have films that have extremely complicated storylines. Another one that you might want to look at, and it's even more complicated than Pulp Fiction, was another Wachowski movie called Cloud Atlas, right? Um, and Cloud Atlas literally gave me a headache when I watched it because for those who don't know, Cloud Atlas is actually 6 stories that constantly interweave with each other throughout the movie. It's a 3-hour movie, and so and the thing I kind of explain when you explain the experience of watching it is, imagine having to hold 6 storylines in your head simultaneously as the movie goes, and then putting together each one because it's not going to go in sequence. So it's an enormous concentration task. Since I was watching it and I really had to pay attention to everything, and when I came out, I had a headache. Right, literally had. I love the movie, but my God, my head. Right, and yeah, so there you cannot avoid that, the whole idea of chronological and non-chronological time, especially with more and more stories playing with the idea of time and sometimes intentionally deceiving you with shifts in time. Yeah.
Sir, just a follow up. So, for example, like Prop and Todorov, we can
Mhm.
still use them for those kinds of narratives.
Yeah. Pero yun nga, you have to do some rearrangement, right? Kasi, well, for Prop, for example, Prop examined folk tales eh. And folk tales generally follow a very nice chronological linear movement, no? Todorov naman is very, his is just literally 5 things, right? And you can break it down to equilibrium and not equilibrium. And going back to equilibrium, well, yun lang naman siya eh. Which means that you can apply to anything. I think that's why I like Todorov's equilibrium theory, is that if you wanted to look at it as a way of looking at narratives, it's applicable to anything. You can do a rom-com, you can do an action movie, you can do a horror movie, you can do a comic book, you can do whatever, and it will apply. And therefore, as a framework, as a way of looking at or trying to understand something, it's a useful framework to have, right? Okay, so I hope that helps clear it up, no?
I have a question.
Okay, go.
Because in the the part in the module about events, it was kind of described as major events. I was like, I wanted to know what are your views on art house films, which are usually not about major events, and it's usually just like literally mundane stuff. How does that like fit in to like the definition? How does that fit into the definition of narrative and of events?
I think, yeah, I get you, and I actually like those kinds of films, right? The quiet ones, um, because it there you can highlight things like character, you can highlight things like emotion, which gets lost, especially if you have big dramatic events. The emotion sometimes disappears from the film or from the story. Um, but a major here simply means that it's highlighted in the text or highlighted in the work. So whatever event is being talked about or shown is a major event, even if it isn't, even if they're just drinking coffee, for example, or naglalaba, right? Things like that. Those are, if they're being shown, they're major, right? In the same way that in poetry, not iba, I'm sure you encountered poems in your poetry classes which where nothing really happened, right? Sean, were you in my lit class?
Eng 12 ba?
I don't remember.
Basta
But
sir, alala ko, basta English kayo yung teacher ko. So, most likely, oo.
so I shared this poem with I shared a poem in my class in my not in my GVE class, no. Let me share it. This one. Buti lang it's still here. So use it kanina for GVE. This one, right? Very simple poem. And some of you
Ah,
might have
yeah, sir. Yung plum.
yung
Alala ko,
plum, di ba?
sobrang nagagawa sa akin kasi yung sinabi ko. Good times.
Yes.
Good
So
times.
I know alam ko lit ka eh. But anyway, di ba? The plum is a simple one. And what's happening in it? A woman is eating a plum, right? Literally. That's all that's happening in the poem. And yet, because that's the choice of subject by the poet, it becomes important, right? It becomes a major situation. But yun nga, it doesn't have to be dramatic. I'm not going to go into the analysis of it. I mean, you guys can do that yourself. But there, no. So in the same way, in art house films, it's the same thing. I think the distinction between major and minor here is minor events are usually not even shown. For example, somebody shows up at the bus stop or at the location. The minor event is how the person got there. Sumakay mo siya ng bus, nag-taxi siya, right? Wala, you don't know, and apparently, it's irrelevant. So, hindi pinakita. That's a minor event. So there, I hope it clarifies.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Hala, 4:51 na. Hala, magtatayo
Um,
at na.
Sir,
Go,
can I ask a question regarding the assignment, the group?
Yo, sure.
So we were tasked to identify the equilibriums and map out each one.
Is this the delivery?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Johnny Express. So are we supposed to look for a connection in between each equilibrium, like each perspective, or not necessarily?
Well, I think, to be fair, you can't avoid it. When you identify the equilibriums, you're going to realize that they're interconnected. And if you watch the film, if you watch it, you'll know why. But there are multiple equilibria in it, and they are connected. And it's not hidden. It's going to be very obvious when you see it. So don't worry about that.
So we're supposed to come up with an explanation talaga. That's what the explanation for.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the idea there kasi is you map them out, no? And then the explanation is really because some people see it, as we said kanina, di ba? Some people see equilibria differently. And I've seen people differ in the number of equilibria they present, right? So some people see 2, 3, 4, 5, depende. So up to you, right? Are any of them wrong? It depends on how well you argue them.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So there. Ano ba? Bell na. Sorry. Bell na pala. So anyway, let me stop recording for a bit.